Hello and welcome to the Gentle Rebel podcast, where I explore how to live a more meaningful life as a sensitive, creative type person without getting overwhelmed by all the noise, chaos, absurdity, craziness of our modern world. My name is Andy Mort. I'm a songwriter, a performer, and I love to help and support my fellow introverted and sensitively intuitive Gentle Rebels unleash their creativity and find the courage and perspective required to make their own quiet stand for what truly matters in life to them. Welcome to episode 290, where today I want to talk about clutter. First, I want to say that sentence was very long. It's very long. But I think, it's okay. How cluttered are things right now for you? Do you ever consider the various clutterments in your life? Yeah, I just made that word up. I keep seeing this word clutter ever at the moment. Not clutterments, but clutter. My Facebook timeline has been a little bit littered with stuff about decluttering. I don't know if it's the time of year or if there's something in the air. Who knows? But I thought I'd add this episode to all that clutter because, why not? And hopefully it will offer maybe another slightly different angle on the topic, because it strikes me as there's a world of clutter and noise that can have a huge impact on introverts and sensitive types, which, when left unaddressed, leads to overwhelm and burnout. So I want to kind of explore it from that perspective, and also look at clutter not just from a physical perspective, but all the other kinds of clutter that we might encounter in life. So let's just start by thinking a little bit about what clutter is. What's it mean? What comes to mind when you hear that word? What fills your head? Clutter. Maybe like mess, disorganized stuff, things not where they should be, too much, too many, unwanted, not needed, old, no longer required, waiting to be sorted, disorganized. I think I've said that. These all mean different things. So there's some crossover, but clutter might spark an idea in you that's different from how I think of it, for example. But for the sake of this episode, when I'm talking about clutter, I'm basically referring to unprocessed stuff that creates a sense of friction in our lives. Because clutter is something that we see, something we hear, we smell, we touch, but it's also something that we kind of feel inside us. Like it sparks a feeling. It creates a sense of friction in that it stops us from seamlessly carrying out the thing that needs to be done. Because, clutter, which doesn't aid things, is in the way. When you sit at a cluttered desk to do some paperwork, for example, clutter is the mess you have to wade through in order to get to the paperwork that you need to work on. And this is friction because it requires kind of extra energy to get to the place that you need to get. You've got to wade through all that stuff. The origin of the word, so clutter, to collect in heaps, crowd together in disorder. It's a variant of klottern, to form clots, to heap on. So clot is the forming of a coagulated mass, and cluster, things naturally gathering or growing together. So clutter, clot, and cluster, perhaps. So there are a few kind of key elements to this: collecting, disorder, forming something out of itself, naturally growing. So kind of clutter being this kind of organism that grows of its own accord. And what strikes me about the idea of clutter is that it's something that happens without us being in the driving seat. It's kind of, it's that evolution of a collection. Even collecting, which can be an intentional hobby. You might collect certain things. It's something where the collection builds because you focused on adding the next thing, more than, focusing on all the stuff that you've already collected. So a collection can become an obsession, even an addiction, because it's the collecting that perhaps becomes the focus. Building, crowding, heaping, where a cluster forms and the fluid nature of the collection clots and turns into a solid coagulated blob of stuff that clogs and prevents us from breathing freely. We're not just talking about physical stuff here. It's obviously been a big swell in the idea of decluttering over the past sort of, I don't know how long ago. Is it about a year when Marie Kondo's Netflix series came out, and this idea of, does this bring you joy? Saying goodbye to stuff and thanking things for being in your life and all that sort of stuff. That kind of approach to keeping or ditching things kind of has become very popular. It's become very mainstream, and people kind of get it. But I don't want to spend this episode focusing on physical stuff as clutter, so much as kind of raising awareness of other clutter that collects and builds and naturally clusters around our lives, which can cause us to feel overwhelmed, to feel snowed under, and it can create friction between us and the things that we actually want to do, the things that actually matter to us, the things that actually bring value to our lives. Because clutter is a feeling, it's claustrophobic, it's a feeling of disorder, disorganization, chaos, confusion. We can use the physical image of a cluttered room to make sense of how clutter can impact us. Just imagine that you're sat in your perfect room. Everything is in its right places, as it should be. The bed's made, things are tidy, things smell. There's that clean smell. Maybe you're sat on the floor or lying on the bed. Maybe you have a chair or a beanbag. Whatever it is where you sit comfortably and you're relaxed. There's a window open, nice gentle breeze flowing through. Close your eyes and feel that breeze on the back of your neck. It's a nice warm breeze, and you feel calm, you feel at peace, you feel relaxed. You just lose yourself in the moment. You've forgotten about anything else, and time is passing, but you don't know how long. It's not important. But then eventually you return to the room and you start thinking about all the things that you've got to do today, all the things you did yesterday, the thing that person at work said last week about you, what you heard on the news this morning, the terrible state of the world. You wonder what could have happened since you last looked or heard the news. As those messages you need to get around to responding to. The party that you said you'd organise for your best friend's birthday. Oh man, that's coming round fast. Oh, there's those invitations you need to reply to. You thought you'd be a bit further along with that project that you set out to do. Oh, you haven't had time to go to the gym for ages. You're feeling, proper food. You need to get a proper food shop in. Finances are in a bit of a state. It's all got a bit out of hand since the summer holiday. And that tranquility is broken. You open your eyes and the room is full of this stuff. These represented in this physical space. The perfect room is now full of appointments, stacking commitments, emotions on the walls, regrets, intentions, frustrations, finances, criticisms, demands, expectations, fears, anxieties, digital noise, opinionated news reports, things that other people have said. This stuff is friction. It stops you running smoothly, sitting in the way of you and what you need to do. Even when you're not directly addressing or interacting with the thing at hand. For example, a bad day at work can impact who you are at home and how you relate to your family. The cause of the friction stops you from getting to who you want to be with your family, and you might even take it out on them. A catalyst is a substance that increases the rate of a chemical reaction without itself undergoing any permanent chemical change. And when we apply this to life, we can think of a book, a a mentor or a coach or an inspiring talk as a catalyst. It can increase the rate of a reaction in us by inspiring us to action without itself undergoing any change. The book doesn't change, we do. The talk doesn't change, we do. The mentor doesn't change, we do. Clutter and its ensuing friction act in the kind of opposite way. They slow down our ability to act in the required way without them undergoing any change themselves. When we have a bad day at work, being grumpy at home, taking out our frustrations on the kids and procrastinating on our most important tasks doesn't change the clutter, doesn't change the thing that has cluttered our mind, and it doesn't remove the friction. All it does is change us in a negative way. The clutter of financial worries is not removed by doing something to distract ourselves from them. It's removed when we address the underlying causes and tackle it head on so that we can make a plan going forward that's going to free us from the friction of that being clutter. Clutter is unprocessed mess. We know it's there, but we don't necessarily know what it is. It's a cluster, it's a collection, it's a mass of stuff that clots our mind.
I sent you a text, but your reply was a phone call.
You're right, mate. Hey, man.
You said it's easier to talk.
I thought it'd be easier just to ring rather than texting back.
But that is not what my phone's for.
Oh, yeah? Did you? Okay.
All I wanted was a yes or a no, but now I've got to spend the next hour on the phone. All I wanted was a yes or a no. All I wanted was a yes or a no, but now I've got to spend the next hour on the phone. All I wanted was a yes or a no.
Okay, see you later then. Oh, wait, just one more thing before you go.
Cluttering is the act of acquiring without awareness. There's a few different sources of clutter that we can bring into our lives and get bogged down by without being kind of aware of their impact on us, especially as introverts and sensitive type personality profiles. First, the moods and feelings of other people and the concern about how our decisions might impact other people. There's a lot of stuff that goes on under the surface when it comes to the energy of the world around us. Other people's emotional experiences can soon become our emotional clutter. Those days when you're kind of wandering around, you're feeling kind of low, you're feeling a bit like things are a bit rubbish today. But until you think about it, you don't realise it's because you had an encounter with someone this morning who was in a bad mood or just rubbed you up the wrong way, or you just had a bad bit of rapport with. You might not even know the person. It can be that affecting, but it builds as clutter because it creates a friction that stops you from being able to function in the way that you need to. Stuff is a natural byproduct of living life, but clutter builds when we're unaware of what that stuff is doing and where that stuff is going. This is why self-awareness, once again, is a key ally for us. Where we often emphasize decluttering as an activity to engage in, the most helpful approach is more of a kind of pre-clutter processing thing, where we learn to process stuff before it becomes clutter. And then we can learn to actively filter and choose what we will even engage with or not, based on some boundaries that we kind of establish at the front end, rather than simply reacting after the fact. It's equivalent of going to the shop and you've seen a bargain and it's like, oh, I can't turn that offer down. Even though it's something you don't need, you've got loads of that thing. And so every time you see this, you're like, oh, that offer's too good to be true. And over time, these bargains become clutter. You have to sort through them. Oh, that's out of date, that one. Things you no longer use. Stuff that's taking up ridiculous amount of storage space. And this kind of pre-clutter processing takes place before the thing even enters the house, before you spend your resources on things you don't need, just because someone else has decided, oh, no, you do need that. You need to spend your money on that. And so, I believe we can become good stewards of stuff before it enters our lives and becomes clutter. Just got to be aware of, actually, do I need that? Is that going to bring value? Is that going to have any sense of importance? Or am I being suckered in by some kind of deal? So what are some examples of the sources of clutter that I'm talking about here? Firstly, unsolicited criticism, where I want to start. I bet I'm not alone in being deeply rattled by criticism. And I'm not just talking about criticism from someone I know. I'm talking about criticism, advice, feedback from people that I don't know or don't really know, and the impact that can have as clutter. Wow, that stuff sticks and travels with you. Like serious, like clutter your mind and make getting on with the stuff that matters really, really tough. Words, suggestions, this unsolicited advice that can really mess you up with what you're doing. I used to get it all the time in music after gigs, probably because that's the point at which I'm most vulnerable. But there's always someone who comes up to you and says like, yeah, I was listening. Like, no sense of like, well done, I really enjoyed that. I was listening to that. Yeah, why don't you try doing this? Or why don't you just like another bit of gear? Like I've got this great pedal. Like it's really, what sort of pedal is that? It's like a distortion pedal. I don't need it. Write songs more in the style of Bob Dylan. You got such a good voice, but you really should just change the style of music that you're making. It'd be so good. Great, thanks. What's really annoying about this is that this stuff said by someone I've never met, who clearly doesn't understand what I'm doing or why, and who is obviously such a personality type that they believe it's their kind of right to come and tell me what I'm doing wrong, or what I should definitely change, somehow worms its way into my head and clutters the crap out of it. It makes me think, oh, no, they're right. Maybe I do need to change everything. I'm rubbish at this. Like I hope, yeah, I'm going to change it. And like genuinely, it really does impact me in that way. I hope I'm not alone in this instinctual response to encounters like that, to people like that, where I assume that actually, they must be right. And I'm being exposed to some kind of fraud. I've got better with this. I've had to. I wouldn't still be doing things like this podcast if I listened to those kinds of characters, and they're well-meaning but completely unhelpful advice. But one of the things I had to overcome was the voice that says, you're being arrogant to say that you don't want advice. So to shut the door on it. Don't close yourself off from help. That's just egotistical and idiotic. My mind can be a tough adversary at times, but I found a really helpful comeback to this. I can't remember who said it, but one of the most helpful ideas around this I've adopted is, don't listen to criticism from anyone that you wouldn't ask for advice from. Could probably pick holes in this idea, but as a basic kind of foundational statement, I find it really helpful because it assumes that I am asking for advice and support and that I get help, and it is those people that I know and trust, and most importantly, those people who get what I'm about and understand my vision and my values and the stuff that makes me tick. These are the people that I can give this role to. Rest assured that when I dismiss the criticism or the feedback from that stranger after the gig, I'm not being egotistical and just turning down any kind of constructive move forwards. I'm respecting my own boundaries, and I'm actually kind of focusing on the most important sources of that kind of voice in my life. And so that way the clutter doesn't actually make it through the front door, because it doesn't need to. Secondly, just noise. Information overload is of course a huge cause of clutter as well. The stuff that you're not prepared for, which takes over your mental state. So I find like listening to the news first thing in the morning can cause this. The news is rarely good. In the sense of like what's being reported, unless you're some kind of comic style supervillain, I guess you might listen to the news and be happy if that's your kind of, I don't know, your jam. But generally, it's not going to put you on the best foot going forward into the day. I've spoken before about the draining power of the news and everything that follows. Social media, conversations around the water cooler, all that sort of stuff. This kind of clutter can create huge friction when it comes to making progress on the stuff that actually matters, the stuff we want to focus on. Third, open loops. So open loops are anything that that plays on our mind that we need to do but haven't yet done, from replying to an email to cutting the grass to renewing the car insurance. Open loops can create clutter everywhere if we don't have a system to either close the loops or to be aware of, our plan to close them, the point at which we will be closing them, so we don't have to kind of think about them. For example, you might not be able to reply to the email right now, but if you know that, every day between 4 and 5, that's when I process emails. The worry about finding time to reply to the email doesn't become clutter, because it's like, well, yeah, I'll do that later. It's fine. At a basic level, creating a to-do list and having a system in place for how and when you'll tackle things is often enough. I plan my week on a Sunday, so I write down everything that I need and want to get done over the following 7 days. Make a kind of theme for the week with 3 major task areas to focus on. Then for each day, I break those tasks down into kind of 3 smaller, more manageable tasks that it's like, I can do 3 things in a day. And I have a space on the note to do this in Evernote, to add anything else that springs to mind that kind of needs doing or would be nice to do through the week. So smaller stuff I might just have a chance to do. Bigger stuff might go on a short list for next week's consideration, and either make it or just be kind of dismissed and okay, you can leave. It's taught me that I can get a lot done in a week, but my expectations for what I can do in one day is probably a lot higher than the reality. So the clutter gets organised in a way that means I'm moving forwards, but at a pace that doesn't mean I'm going to burn out.
If I can hear you breathing, if I can hear you swallowing, well, that means you're too close to me. If I can see Twitter on your phone and everyone you're following, yeah, that means you're too close to me. Please don't be in my personal space. You don't have to be so close that I can smell your face. You really don't have to stand that close to me. I can still hear you when you speak if you're within 100 feet of me. I just came to the shop to buy some bits for tea. I fill my basket and I'm standing in line thinking about what I watch on TV. When I get home, and here you are, your breath on my neck, standing so close to me. Why are you there, breathing down my neck? Seriously? No, seriously, what's wrong with you? Step back, give me some space, for goodness sake.
Okay, and finally, beliefs that don't belong to you. So we carry all sorts of strange thoughts around with us. We interact with the world based on our worldview, our values, our beliefs. And when these things are not ours in quite a significant way, it can become clutter. We think through the beliefs of others, the values of others, the worldviews of others, and we lose our own ability to see things as we might see them. Cluttered belief is when we think something but don't know why. We have something blocking us from going after the thing we truly feel pulled towards. I see this in coaching a bit, where someone might really want to pursue a certain goal, but they hold a belief that stops them from going after it. Might be a message from childhood, a story that they're been told about who they are, what they're capable of, or something from from school or a religious organization which tells them that this thing is somehow not the right thing for them. Then it's not acceptable. It's not. They shouldn't desire it or want it. And this kind of clutter can be hugely overwhelming and difficult to shift. It's the kind of clutter that can become like part of the furniture. It's like, the piles of old books on the little table in the spare room. Except when you start to take the books off, you realise that there is no little table. It's just all books. I could have sworn there was a little table under there. No, it's just all books. All old books. I don't know where these books came from, whose they are, who's ever read them. I don't know. I've never read them. Just keep tripping over them when I'm trying to get to my guitar. So, beliefs can become... they can become, part of the furniture. They can become the furniture. And we kind of need to shift through them because they clutter us. They create this friction that stops us from from actually doing the stuff that we want to do, because we get caught up on these things that other people believe about our lives and the things that people want for us and all that sort of stuff, which may or may not be the stuff that we want for ourselves. So that's clutter. Friction that slows us down, stops us from getting to where we need to go. So in the extended play episode, I take this idea a little bit further. Talk about decluttering. Talk about, I can't really remember what I talk about. I've already recorded the episodes. First time I've recorded the extended play episode before the main episode. Just a bit of an experiment. Also went without a script. I went minus the clutter of a script. So it's freestyle and unedited. Scariest one I've done so far. But, it felt important to do it that way. So I share some of my thoughts about minimalism and how last year I took my own minimalist adventure to a new level. Even talk a little bit about why I've been keeping an eye on myself and my propensity to use decluttering as a defense mechanism when things feel out of control. So, yeah, if you fancy hearing a little bit more like neuroses in my musings, then come and join us on Patreon. It's just $3 a month. You get the bonus private podcast feed there for the extended play episodes, and I create those every time I record a main show like this one. So I just get a bit more personal and share stuff that I'm not brave enough to leave hanging out in the public, and I certainly wouldn't leave this week's one hanging out in the public. So if you want to have a little go with that, then go to patreon.com/Andy Mort. Patreon is spelled Patreon. And so, yeah, go there if you want to find out more and join the fun little bunch of beautiful patrons. And you get access to all the stuff that I've made available there since the start. So there's lots of bonus podcasts and Stoic Sanctuaries and other things, extended interviews, that kind of clutter. So if you want a bit more clutter in your life, then join me on Patreon. Great.
I think I've reached my limit now. I really have to go. Please don't try to follow me, 'cause I need to be alone. I'll be back when I'm back. I'll be here when I'm here. It's a little thing I do. I'm not being antisocial. It is nothing to do with you. You know I still love you.
Well, thank you so much for listening today. I hope it's been helpful in some way or insightful or whatever. I don't know. If it has been any of these things or something else, then please do consider supporting the show by leaving a review and a rating wherever you listen to podcasts, wherever you listen to this right now. Share it on social media as well. Both of those perfect ways to just get this episode and previous ones of it into more of the ears of introverts and sensitive types searching for a bit of reassurance, bit of help, bit of support, bit of connection to other people who resonate with these ideas and topics that we're exploring. So, if we can make one more gentle rebel aware that they are a gentle rebel and they feel a little bit less alone, then ultimately the whole world is going to be better off. So that's good. So please do share it wherever you can. And thanks so much to those who do that already. It really does mean a lot. So I'm going to be back again. What I said in the extended play episode is that I'm giving myself 2 weeks because I'm away next weekend. So what I'm going to say is I'm going to be back again in 2 weeks' time with another episode of the podcast, just to take the pressure off. If I get one in next week, then we'll consider that a bonus. But I'm not going to, clutter my mind with the idea that I need to. So I hope that's okay. Until I do return, hopefully in 2 weeks' time. Do remember that you're an artist and that the world needs your art. And now, go make somebody's day. Cool. Goodbye.
Angels in disguise, we can be, 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 we can all be angels in disguise.